A very warm welcome to you all. Welcome to Designing Cities for All.
The two-year activity program of Pakhuis de Zwijger,
in which we take a deep dive into designing products,
places and systems for all.
At every level, we can see certain communities being marginalized, being taken advantage of, and it's all part of the design.
When you're neurodiverse, you're in a world that isn't designed for you.
We're not the only species on the planet. The city needs to be also a city for the other species.
And we need to do something because the old structures in which we worked don't work.
Things won't change just if we just let things happen.
Instead of saying, what can we do to mitigate the impacts? We need to start asking ourselves, what is causing that?
Design is political, that we need to design processes, that we are all different, but there are things that unite us.
These are the things that need to be on the table, that need to be recovered in order to redesign the society.
Everything around us was once designed and can therefore be redesigned.
How do we teach design in a way where students can be really critical of the systems of power that have informed and dominated design?
Inclusion happens by design or not at all.
I think it's always some kind of a co-creation process, and you have to make very little steps and then figure out together what works and what doesn't.
it takes as much time to do something good as it takes time to do something bad.
All design tells a story.
But there's also a bit of a need to not just write ourselves into the past, but also kind of write ourselves into the future.
I invite you so much to join my path of liberation, and I'm hopefully being welcomed by your path of liberation.
We have to heal collectively. We have to help each other understand some of these constructs that actually divide us.
Not fitting in was a blessing, or I would have turned out just like you.
Hello, hello. Welcome to you all from Pakhuis de Zwijger, for people who are here with us in the studio and people who are watching us online. Please have a warm round of applause. For yourself, thank you so much for being here tonight with us. The video that you just watched is the wrap-up of the first 2 years of Designing Cities for All, which is a 2-year research and activity program in which we take a deep dive into designing systems, places, and products for all. So we started in 2023, again, with the focus on regenerative design. And we have done this so far with 6 fellows. We aim to do it with 6 fellows so far. Now we're doing the 4th fellowship. And by fellowships, we mean like a period of time that we work with a partner outside of Pakhuis de Zwijger, and we really go deep into a topic, and then we try to understand that how we can redesign cities in a way that recovers and strengthens the systems in it, so that people and everything beyond humans, so we are also talking about non-humans, can bloom. So that's in short. My name is Faiza Mohammadi, and I'm a part of the CFA team. And tonight I'm also wearing the hat of moderator, which I'm so excited for. Yay. And so during this evening, we will, of course, with the editors of this cool book that I have one copy of it next to me, Teaching Design for Values. We are going to launch this book. We are going to have a lot of conversation and discussion around it with the editors, with main contributors, also international contributors who are joining us online, and also with people from Design for Values Institute. The book is published by TU Delft at the University of TU Delft, of course, also funded by Design for Values Institute, which we will discuss about later as we go on. I want also to let you know that we want you to be part of our conversation. That's why we will have some Q&A part. So if you have anything that you want to share, you have a question, you have a remark, please save it. And then when it's the time, my colleague will come to you with a mic, and then you can pose your questions. Also, for people who are watching us online, We will have a Menti code for you that you can see on the screen. It's going to be, I will read it now, 45703580. I'm going to repeat it again, 45703580. And you can also participate in the conversation. You can just send it to you can go to menti.com and then put your question. I will receive it in my iPad here. And yeah, in this way, all of us can be engaged in the conversation. Welcome again. And let's start with our interesting theme of Teaching Design for Values book here. Welcome to you all. Thank you for coming here. Roberto, how are you doing? Again, with DCFA, we're here.
Well, thank you so much for inviting us to be here, and thanks for the Delft Design for Values Institute for supporting us in publishing this book. And most thanks to you, Amy and Maria, who have edited the book with me. We are super happy to be here tonight. We have worked many years on this book, as the contributors can attest. And we are very happy with the results. We think this conversation on teaching design for values is really, really urgent.
Yeah, perfect. Roberto is an associate professor of spatial planning and strategy at the Department of Urbanism at TU Delft. And we have worked a lot, as he said himself before. We did also one of DCFA fellowships, actually the second fellowship of 2023. That was super interesting. The title was In Common. You can check it on our website, dezwijger.nl/DCFA. At the end of the program, I'm going to also mention this again. But tonight we're here for the book, of course, with Amy and Maria. Maria Novas Faradas, she is an architect and researcher and also guest researcher at Leiden University, Department of Culture and Anthropology. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And also Amy joining us here. Amy Thomas, she is also an associate professor of architectural history at TU Delft. And yeah, let's start with going back to 2019, right? How did the team shaped together? How was the idea started?
Amy, I think.
Well, it seems to be a topic up for debate, to be honest. This is a testament to how long the project's been going on for. Well, Roberta and I were both involved with the Delft Design for Values Institute, and were both interested in pursuing something on education within that remit. And so we came together and applied for a small pot of money to do a workshop. And that was a seed fund. And yeah, from the workshop, in putting together the workshop, we then contacted Maria to help, who was at that point a guest researcher in TU Delft and also doing her PhD. And that was when, yeah, the conversations started, I suppose. And then we had this great workshop with people from all over the world who came together to talk about the subject. And it was from there that we realized, yeah, we wanted to make a publication.
Interesting. I guess we have also some photos of the workshop that you've been working together, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then the plan was to finish the book in less time, or how did it go? Because of COVID, it was a pause, or?
Yeah. You go. No. Yeah. COVID was definitely the thing that slowed us all down, I think. You know, just the fact that it was more difficult to communicate, but also the workloads and everything. So yeah, it was a bit slower than we would have liked, but by the same token, we also had more time to gestate and to kind of think about what the book was and to take our time with it. So that it also had kind of positive aspect to it too. Yeah.
And Amy, you yourself, you're an architectural historian. What does that entail? What is the focus of your research, what you study?
Yeah, well, my research looks mostly at political economy and the built environment. So I think about how political ideology and economic ideology kind of infuse into the built space. And I've also been doing a project recently on gender and workplace design. But I think more generally, I'm interested in when there are tensions between design intent and a user experience in architectural history. So particularly with the project I've been working on with gender, that's really an issue, right? Because things are designed without female bodies in mind, and women's experiences in the workplace and have been very much kind of counter to what was anticipated, actually.
Yeah, speaking of user experience, that really enlightened, again, the importance of writing a book like Values because of the experiences that, because of the users that are going to experience. Yeah. Thank you so much. How about you, Amy? You're also currently researching, and then you also, how was your contribution to the book? And then
you mean
you want to say something? Oh, sorry, Maria. Yeah. Sorry.
No worries. Yes, actually, I met Amy before than Roberto, and we were collaborating at the Department of Architecture at TU Delft already, dealing with issues like gender. And by then Amy was also working in the syllabus of the course of architectural history. I started teaching by then also the seminar, trying to introduce all these themes, inclusivity, diversity, into the work of the students, let's say. So when this opportunity came up of publishing this book, it was a kind of logical way of pursuing this interest into how differently we value different things when talking about what is important, what do we need to know, and what do we need to, knowledge do we need to produce in order to face the problems we face nowadays, right, in our world. So it was connected in that way, I guess.
Yeah, perfect. If I want to ask you, like, how do you introduce the book in short? What would you say? Like, what can a person expect from reading a book? You want to go?
Look, the book is a response to a very lively debate in our university. Of course, we are at the Delft University of Technology, and that entails a tradition of believing that technology is neutral. And we wanted to contest that, to really ask people to reflect on the fact that technology is never neutral. It's always embedded in values, be them hidden or explicit. And there is no such a thing as a neutral researcher or a neutral teacher. We are always, you know, somewhere. We have bodies, we have experiences, we have histories, and we communicate them to the students. One thing that is interesting is that students, when they see the title of the book, Teaching Design for Values, they are a little bit put off because they think it's not for them. It's only for teachers. But I would argue that's not the case, actually. I think students would really benefit from reading all the chapters of this book, which, by the way, address design in a very wide conception of design. Not only design of objects, but also design of processes and so on. So yeah, the book was a response to that, and I think to that idea of neutrality in science. And we hope that people will read the book and change their minds about that and rethink this neutrality.
Nice. You already also answered the second question I wanted to ask. That no, it's all okay. That who are like the potential audience of the book? Is it like only teachers or students? You already mentioned that. It's super cool. But the other question that I had in mind, like back then when you started to brainstorm about this book and starting editing this, what was a lack of something that you felt because you already were educating people, right? That was a moment that you realized, okay, there's something lacking, we need to address this. Was a moment like this that you were feeling that we need to include values in our processes or curriculum in a way?
I think the thing is that everybody has values when they teach, right? Everybody comes with their own set of values, whether they're implicit or explicit. I think what we were interested in doing with the book was really drawing out what values are and how they relate to a design education. And so it's more about making them explicit and thinking about whose values are we talking about here. and what does that actually mean? And some of the chapters are really quite technical on that, so they really go into, you know, quite a lot of detail about the difference between value and values, and what it actually means to invoke them in a kind of classroom. Whereas some of the others are a little bit more discursive, and they have more of a general kind of idea about social justice or social responsibility in design and how we can kind of bring them into it. But yeah, I think there was not necessarily one aha moment for any of us. And I think the other thing is we all know colleagues that do this, right? So it was also about, okay, let's actually bring those people together and get it down on paper and actually talk about what we mean when we're doing these things.
Yeah, and by people, it's not only TU Delft educators, it's like international contributors from a lot of different parts
We were surprised when we organized the workshop because we had all these participants from all over the world, and you know, we just wanted to organize a small workshop, which tells us that this is a question for a lot of people. A lot of people are thinking about teaching design for values, and I want to make a point here because it's not teaching values, right? This book doesn't teach values. That's not what the book does. It's really a discussion about how can we, in the classroom, talk about values, expose values, make them explicit. How can we talk about whose values are inserted in the design and so forth?
Yeah. So as the title suggests, it's like tools and practices also in it, like from different background. That's very cool and interesting. And why do you think teaching these values are important?
Well, it depends on which values, but
the values in the book.
Values in the book in general. Yeah, let's say that the structure of the book, that was also an idea we came up through this slow process through the pandemic. Organized information also from the generic to the specific in a way. Like first we discuss about concepts, what does a value mean, which values, for example, the chapter of Roberto, he talks about justice, social justice, and discusses that value specifically in class, etc. Then the tools, like what types of methodologies we have developed pedagogically in order to address those issues in class, let's say, and there are some contributions in relation to that. And then the last part, practices, are examples of things that have been done already, that were kind of experimental sometimes in different parts of the world also, but that were successful in this kind of, innovative pedagogical process that involves doing this effort for which we are not trained for. And actually that was the lack, or one of the main, let's say, urgencies we wanted to face. Like we want to do it, but we don't know how, and we don't have tools. And sometimes, as teachers, we are not properly equipped to do this job. And sadly to say, but it's true in a way, you know. And that was some of the aims of the book also, to help us to keep the discussion going on, but also.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you for the honest answer. I also wanted to ask, like, what fields does the concepts in the book cover? It's not just urban planning, architecture, right? It's also artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence, product design, real estate management, cool. All kinds of wherever you can find some sort of design. And we define design loosely as future-oriented, propositional activities that create new realities, right? So everything that creates something new is design.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be architectural design. Although there is a little bit of a predominance of architects in the book.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
That's where we are. But we try to go a little bit further.
That was actually a very good definition of design, as we also aim to have the same look in designing cities for all, because a lot of time when you go with design and cities, people be like, it's more about urban planning or something, where it's more than that. If we can have a look at the slide of the content, I also want to mention that tonight we have invited 3 authors of the book that they're going to present the chapter that they have worked on. But of course, there are a lot of more people that have been working on the book and they were contributing. So
actually, we have quite a few contributors in the audience.
Oh, do we? Interesting.
Yes, and, it would be nice if they could also say something.
Sure, why not? Yeah, whenever you want to say something, please just raise your hand and a mic will come to you. But can you raise your hand maybe?
If you are a contributor, can you raise your hand?
Ah, interesting. Oh, nice. Okay, welcome. Good to know. Yeah, with that being said, thank you so much for your intro talk. We will, of course, talk about this more. You can have access to the book through, I have to check the website, tudelft.open.books.nl or books. But I will mention this later.
TU Delft Open.
Open.
I think if you Google TU Delft Open,
it will pop up, right? Exactly.
And
then you have free access to it. It's like a digital version is free, absolutely. And then that's the nice part. Thank you so much. Now I want to invite another guest to join us here. Ibo van de Poel. Please give him a round of applause. Hello, welcome Ibo. Ibo is the scientific director of the Delft Design for Values Institute, and he is also a professor in ethics and technology at TU Delft. Thank you so much for being with us here tonight, Ibo. Do you want to start with a short background of your work and then what you do actually as a scientific director at Delft Design for Values Institute?
Yeah, so I myself, I'm a philosopher of technology, so I study ethical issues in technology.
Sir, I guess your mic is not connected, or can you just try again? Or
can you hear me now?
Can you use Roberto's mic? Yeah, it would be perfect. Perfect.
I think this is better, yeah. Yes. Yeah, so I myself, I'm a professor in ethics and technology. So I study ethical issues raised by new technologies. And I'm also particularly interested myself in how we can address already in the early phases of technological development ethical issues and values. So traditionally, ethicists of technology sometimes looked at technology and just criticized it. But we interested in also in a more constructive way shaping technology. And the Design for Values Institute neatly fits that. And as you say, indeed, I'm the scientific director of this institute. I have the honor to be the scientific director of this institute. And just for your idea, the institute is not really a kind of separate organizational unit of the university, but it's more cooperation in which people from different faculties voluntarily join the center and work on this Design for Values team. And now we have very different faculties. So we have the architects that are sitting here next to me, but we also have computer scientists, civil engineers, industrial design engineers, philosophers. And the interesting thing is they all have rather or completely different ideas about what values are, what design is. So my task is to bring all these people together.
Because of their different background, probably.
Indeed, and to make sure that there are some bridges are being built, that we at least to some extent understand each other or can criticize each other. So that's what I'm doing as scientific director and trying to get this topic on the table. Yeah.
Interesting. And for how long the institute has been founded? I guess 6 years or something.
Yeah, that's true. So we had an initial period of 5 years. Then I was not yet. Jeroen van der Hoven was my predecessor as scientific director. And now since a year, I'm the scientific director. So the institute exists for 6 years, indeed. Yeah.
To make things a bit more clear, you were using terms ethics and technology and all of these things. Let's say that it is written on the website that the Institute aims for research, education, and collaboration on design for values and responsible innovation. Yeah. I would really like to know your thoughts on this. Can you elaborate on this? What is responsible innovation? What do we mean by ethics in technology?
Yeah. So that's a lot of terms, indeed. and I try to explain a little bit. So with design for values, we basically mean that's the main thing we're talking here about tonight, is that we try to take into account important values, often more values, in a design process of new technology. Now, to put it very simple, responsible innovation roughly means the same. It means that we innovate in a responsible way, which among others implies taking these values seriously into account in the design of new technology. So yeah, so that's the kind of core idea that we systematically think of values. So in a sense, like was said, if you design, you're always motivated by values. But the idea of design for values is that we want to make these values explicit, that you really can think about it, and that you do it in a systematic way. So not just as an afterthought or only later realize, but that you from the start think about, okay, I want to be my design to be inclusive. Wow, what does it mean to be inclusive? And once that's clear, how do we make a design really inclusive? And then we find out, okay, but it also needs to be sustainable. And maybe making it sustainable can make it less inclusive. So how are we going to deal with that value tension? So that are the type of questions we're looking at.
Yeah, fundamental questions indeed.
Indeed.
And the other question that I wanted to ask you is that once we had like the meeting, you told me that each year the Institute works on a specific theme, like it might be like justice. Can you elaborate on this and let us know where does these themes come from, and if there is any opportunity for like outsiders, so to say, like an independent researcher to work with you or with the institution?
Yeah. So indeed, in this second period, we decided to have each year an annual theme, and the first annual theme is what we call Design for Justice. So the reason we have chosen this theme is for a number of reasons. So one thing is we think justice is a very important value, but it's typically a value that is not always that prominent in design. So there's a lot of talk. I mean, if you talk about sustainability or safety or privacy, there's a lot of ideas, also a lot of knowledge how to do it. But to design for justice, it's just upcoming, so to say. So we thought it's an interesting theme. And we also found it interesting because in computer science, you have artificial intelligence that might go against justice. In cities, you have justice concerned if you design a water management system. So what we do, you can go to our website, you can see all our events. Everyone is welcome to these events. We also have a bigger event in June. And we also, for example, writing a white paper on what it means to design for justice. So everyone who wants to contribute is welcome, basically.
That's super cool. But also it's more like students also have the opportunity to be part of your activities, or maybe the better question is what kind of activities is going on in Design for Values Institute apart from publishing books or...
Yeah. So we also, so as part of the Design for Justice annual team, we have a student thesis competition. So students that vote a master or bachelor thesis that touches on the topic design or justice can submit to that. But we also, and I think actually this book is part of that, we also want to promote teaching education on design for justice. We even have our ambition that all students of TU Delft should be able to design for values. Well, I'm not claiming that they now can.
That was a big claim. I wanted to say, watch out.
Long-term goal, but it shows that we really ambitious and really want to do this and develop new teaching materials like this book. Yeah.
That's very good to know, because always like Delft is known as a very technical university, and knowing that working towards values is really nice. In the previous slide, there was the website written on the image. delftdesignforvalues.nl. You can check it, and then there are a lot of cool things happening there, and then people can be part of it. Thank you so much for now, Ibo. We will come back to you for sure, and we can move to the next part. But before that, I would like to open the floor for any questions, remarks, comments. If you want to add anything, if you have worked with Design for Values Institute, or if you have any ideas on the book, or if you've read it, you want to share anything, feel free. That's the moment. But later we will also have another moment. So be generous with your questions. Yeah. If you can wait just a sec, my colleague is coming with a mic, so online people can also hear you well.
So I'm only curious if you're also inspired by Mark Moore.
I guess not.
Okay.
We were inspired by a lot of people. I'm not familiar with Mike Moore. Can you tell us about him?
Yeah, he is a professor from New York. He worked long time in New York, and he is also well known for value-driven design, but more in the public area. So, yeah, in the government area.
Thanks for the reference.
Yeah.
We will dive into it.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I guess there was another question in the last row.
Just short question. Just to understand if, or what are the benefit or the recommendation you guys would give for design professionals to read the book? What can we take out of it as learners to practice in a more commercial area, let's say, in our day jobs?
I have a ready-made answer for you. Look, one of the things that we are trying to advance with the book is this dislocation of the role of the designer. Because as architects, all of us, we were educated in that tradition where the designer is the all-knowing guy, right? Probably, who will bestow the solution. You know, you have a problem, you have a solution, and I know the solution because I'm the designer. And we are totally against that idea. I think designers could and should work with others, with society, with citizens, with users, because you are designing for them. So what are their values? We want to know, right? Of course, you have your own values, which are going to be infused in the design probably, but this new role for designers is actually not so disseminated yet. I think a lot of designers in architecture, I'm talking more about, right? They see themselves as solution givers, and yeah.
Okay. No. Thanks.
Convincing or not?
Yeah, no, I don't come from architecture. So
yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
I guess Amy want to add something.
I come from TU Delft as well, but so I guess there is some connection to it. Yeah, but thanks.
Yeah, I would just add to that I mean, we'll hear from Vanessa Sadel in a bit, but I think her chapter is really, and this section on practices is really instructive because it's about working with designers and users in the same sort of breath, and how to get designers to really think about the users of their spaces in really new and innovative ways. And she's particularly talking about people with disabilities. So how can we make designers more empathetic in that way? So I think that's, for a practitioner, that would be an interesting book, part of the book to read.
Perfect. Thank you so much. If we have time for one more question, I'd say. You can go through it and then that person.
Hi. I'm also a designer from architecture background, but I'm really interested in design for values as well. And what I'm curious about the institution within Delft is if there is this specific challenging of the dominant values in design currently, because there is, of course, this domination of like the modern values or the capitalist values in design, in architecture, in everything that we are doing. So is there this is the goal to bring awareness to the values, or is there also this active challenging aspect, the speculative aspect of
and challenging the values, right?
Yeah. I guess Ibo might have an answer to this, right? You can join us here again.
I'll just return here. I think there's both. So I think there's making the things explicit and putting it on the table. But I think by doing that in itself, you're already putting it into the discussion. And we also said we want to focus, although I mean, there might be some discussion. We want to focus on what we call moral values, so values that are important from a moral point of view. And that in itself already involves some critical stance, I think, to some of the current values that are being designed for. Yeah.
Was it an answer? Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, if I may add something, in relation specifically to the book, it's true that there is this general reflection on values and the value of making them explicit, which is already something very important to start the conversation. But it's true that when talking about practices and examples, of course, we try to integrate those practices that kind of challenge predominant, non-inclusive, patriarchal, colonial biases. Yes, we did an effort in order to make visible those things that often remain in the margins and authors that often remain in the margins. It's a limited effort yet, but we can say we try.
Which, by the way, these values that are hidden, they remain hidden when you say that technology is neutral or that design should be neutral. You're just really supporting the status quo. So I think by talking about values and by challenging the values that are out there, right? Capitalism, patriarchy, we can advance a little bit.
Perfect. Do you think you can save your question for the second round? Perfect, because I don't want to wait our special guest, Vanessa Zarol Blasquez, anymore. Please give her a round of applause. She will.
Thank you.
Vanessa is joining us all the way from Lima, and with 6 hours time difference. I guess she will be on the screen soon. Can you hear us, Vanessa?
Yes, perfectly. Thank you.
Awesome. We can also hear you perfectly. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Vanessa is an architect and co-director of Architecture for All of the Union International des Architects. Thank you so much for being here, and I guess no time to lose. Please go ahead. She's going to present the chapter of Design for Values for Experience, chapter 14 of the book. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you, and good evening to everyone. I'm really excited to share this space with you. I'm an architect. I'm associate professor at the University of Lima here in Peru, but I'm also a mother of twins, and this is actually how my life or my way to understand how architecture impacts our lives change. And that also changed how I wanted to teach architecture to my students. At some point, I find myself experiencing several user accessibility deficiencies by taking, for example, my kids for a walk using a lane because my double stroller didn't fit in the sidewalk. And when it did, it occupied the entire width, preventing another person from passing next to our side. So I believe that the best way for students to become aware of the implications of their future professional practice is to confront them directly with the reality, through different experiences. So this chapter, Design Values for Experience, presents these approximations to encounter this reality, especially the reality experienced by a group of people who are often forgotten in architectural projects, and that is people with disabilities. So I will quickly walk you through each of the stages in my methodology based on Asger Jorn's proposal, and you will be able to see some photographs of the learning process. So Laura, please, could you put the first picture? Thank you. Okay, I see it. So the first stage is called stupefaction. It's the subject, architectural design, has an ambitious goal, and that is to make students aware of the importance of understanding the diversity of users. So our learning begins with a review of the bibliography on topics like universal design, as well as national regulations and accessibility. And this makes the students realize that we still have a lot to do in Peru, but this happens also worldwide. And this definitely makes them feel like they need to search and investigate and to know what happens in other countries. But this is not enough, so this takes us to the next step. Laura, please, the next picture. Thank you. So then we begin something I call experimentation as a personal work. And in this stage, this stage is composed of different activities exploring otherness as personal work. So in the first activity, students have to make a tour in the city of Lima using a wheelchair. They choose the site, the area they want to visit. They do it on weekends. And the only condition is they don't get to, they cannot get up from the wheelchair while they're doing the visit. And this activity closes on next Monday in the classroom with the exchange of the experiences. Laura, please, the next picture. The second one consists of students putting themselves in the place of a person with total visual impairment and learning to move using a guide cane, learn to use the podotactile floors and the tracking techniques. Laura, please, the next one. So then a process of internalization begins as an approach to the real user. And I think there is no better way to establish contact with others than doing it naturally in everyday life. And for this part of the subject, I coordinate and organize a joint visit to different museums in Lima. And the users who accompany us are children with disabilities. Because I think to know something, to understand something, children are not afraid of experimentation, and they do it using all their senses. So my students get a lot from these kind of experiences. Laura, please the next one. And then comes what I call this possession of the experience as a result of this internalization process. And this is where the students present their process, on their design process, on two separate occasions to external guests. In the first presentation, the guests are people with physical disabilities. And in the second one, there are people with sensory disabilities. So the important thing is that through the course, students have this realistic approach to their future practice and have a real and direct contact with users. The next one, please, Laura. And I try to do or to go one step further with my students. So we talk about inclusion, we talk about equity, about users being able to enjoy accessible architecture, but we also talk about inclusive communication of the architectural project. And this is why we do not only work with traditional tools like drawn plans or models, but the students also learn to work with haptic plans, with reliefs and different textures, also prepare brief reports of the project printed in Braille. And that for just to mention some examples, no? Laura, please, the next one is the last picture. And I'm really positive. I firmly believe that an architect is a professional dedicated to serving others and enhancing the quality of people's lives. So it is through these kind of experiences that we cultivate sensitivity, empathy, and attentiveness to the needs of others in our students. So that's what the chapter is about. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. It was really interesting. While I was reading the book chapter, I was already amazed by this methodology. Before leaving the floor to Roberto, Amy, and Maria to add their comments or reflections, I really want to know, I'm wondering, what was your students' reflection after doing all of these practices?
You know, something really, I don't know how to call it, magical happens after the semester ends. I always invite my students to visit the children in their school to present their projects, no? So they have to explain in very simple words what they have done in all the subject. And this is something we do after they get their grades. So they're almost on holiday vacations, and it's something that it's voluntary. And
all the student goes. No? They all go, they take their models, their haptic plans, and they explain it to the kids, their teachers, their parents. So it's a really overwhelming experience also. No? I think this demonstrates that they are sensitive. They want to connect with people. They get to connect with people, and it's important to relate it with to be related with the real users, because they get so many inputs in the design process. So the students get so many ideas that helps the project to develop in a wider way. You know, so yeah, I think that's it, Fasi.
Yeah, interesting. I wanted to say that, like, with your methodology, the students had like real contact with the people, with the users, but they did really put their feet in the shoe of the user. Like it became real in your case. So you want to add something?
I want to highlight 3 things that she so magically teaches to the students. I think empathy, service, and what was the other thing? Sorry. Well, empathy and service are 2 values that you don't find in university education very often. And I think she does that in a magical way. The fact that the students, you know, even when they are on holidays, they go there to present to the children with disabilities is really super nice.
Yeah. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just such a beautiful project. And the thing I really like about it is, you know, with everything to do with equity, diversity, and inclusivity, it's often a very scary thing to embark on, especially if you don't feel that you've engaged with it yet, or you're trying these things for the first time. And I think what's amazing about your course, Vanessa, is that you're giving students the opportunity to get it wrong, and to try again, and to get it wrong, and to try again, and not to be afraid of that, actually, and actually just to try in the first place. And maybe, can I ask Vanessa a question? Is that okay? I'm curious, like, if there were really instructive moments when the students got it wrong, or if you see the same thing every time you run the course, you know, where they do get it wrong and then they learn from that. Or if you yourself feel like you got it wrong at any point and then sort of adjusted the course accordingly, or how that learning process has gone for you.
I think both of this has happened. No, I got wrong something and then I made the adjustments, but it's part of developing a different methodology. No, and it also happened then that the students got wrong something and they learn from each other also. When I presented this 4 years ago, we've met in Delft. I don't know if you remember, but I was the only one in a group of 100 professors teaching inclusion in design, you know, inclusion in architectural faculty. Now I'm in charge of a group of 10 professors, so I share with them, I encourage them to make this kind of experience also. So now students students also learn from their companion, from their friends from different years. So we are a big group now making this kind of experimentations now.
Yeah, it's becoming mainstream. We are getting there.
I remember the 3rd word. Connection.
Connection, perfect.
Empathy, service, and connection. These are things you don't learn at university very often.
No. Generally in educational institution, I would say, not just university. Perfect. Thank you so much, Vanessa.
Okay.
Please be with us, and we will come back to you again at the end. For now, I would like to invite 2 other guests who are here with us tonight. It's also, they have wrote another chapter of the book together. Lise Manier and Charlotte Kobes. Please give them a round of applause. They're going to present chapter 6 of the book, which is teaching aspiring industrial designers to understand values. And S in parentheses, that's important. We will go back to it maybe. Thank you so much for being with us here tonight.
Well,
the floor is yours. Yeah.
So yes, so it was about 2020. I thought we were invited to develop a course for bachelor students at Industrial Design Engineering, Delft University of Technology as well. And it was part of the bachelor's renewal, so that happened at the same time. And that was a very new course that came from a sort of starting point that's in the past, there was a big focus on designing successful products that people would love to use, but that this was, in the situation, actual situation, that it was not sufficient anymore or acceptable even, and that there should be a bigger focus on responsibility. And a little bit at the same time, we were invited to write this chapter, which was actually about the development of the course. So that was a little bit of a process that went hand in hand, I would say. So how we dealt with like the development of the course is that we started thinking, okay, we need to teach students, well, first to understand, of course, what who are their users, what the value of their users are, but to go one step further. So for every design, there might be unintended consequences, externalities, and really to invite them to start this reflection from the beginning of the design process. Which used to be a little bit like one of the last steps, maybe, but we wanted to shift that from the beginning. And that meant diving deeper into their users' values, but also into their own values, and maybe more importantly, to look at stakeholders broadly, so all sorts of indirect stakeholders, which can go as deep as concepts or so democracy, for example, but also earth, animals, and to reflect on this unintended consequences and externalities. And I think the main goal at this point was really to make them realize that all the decisions that they would make in their design process was value laden, and that there would almost always be negative consequences. And that's a little bit the moment where we thought, okay, that's a little bit daunting for students to realize that whatever they do, there will be negative consequences. So we also teach them some basics of ethics. So teaching them three ethical lenses, to be precise, and for them to start a reflection of what is acceptable or not, and what they are willing to accept in their design. So maybe Charlotte, you want to go a little bit about like maybe the experience, and maybe the way we teach it.
That it's on. I should have also give a bit of background. Lies is actually an associate professor of design for sustainable behavior at TU Delft, and Charlotte is also senior researcher on envisioning marketing post-growth. Wow, envisioning marketing post-growth.
Not at the TU Delft, but at Advanced.
Yeah, yeah, true. So please, the floor is yours. I just had to mention this.
Thank you. Yeah, and something about the experience we had in the course, but perhaps also it's not the next. It's not working. Hello. It's not a checklist that you just work your way through. It's also really about having this dialogue and that help you to reflect and discover what's your own point of view, but also what are other perspectives, of course. So we had this several ways of having dialogue, starting with just a very simple form that you are just listened to for 2 minutes by a partner, which is a weird experience for most 18-year-olds, just being listened to for 2 minutes. You notice that they stop talking because they're not experienced in having this room to talk and to explore their own thoughts. Ending with a whole group discussion with the whole studio with 25 students. By the way, it's nice to mention that we have groups of 300 plus students, so it's like a big factory at IDE. So we had studios of 25 people, and with the whole studio, they had to do dialogues, for example, on their feet, so taking position in the dialogue by showing where you are in the room and how you oppose to certain propositions and these kind of things. It was also to help them discover value tensions, and I really enjoyed these dialogues, though, to be honest, in the experience, not every teacher was as comfortable with facilitating those dialogues, so I don't think they were always super successful. I was also teaching and I enjoyed them. Yeah. And perhaps a last thing, what we noticed, because they're first-year students, so they're not like, some people really enjoyed this course and really made that change their mind, or some article that we provided them with, and some didn't really. Of course, nothing happened in a way, but we do think this is a nice start already in the beginning, because it doesn't hurt. So if you don't get it, it's not the bad thing, and if you do get it, then you already have this nice start of your first year, I think. So that was also an experience. Yeah.
Thank you. Elise, do you want to add something, or for now?
Maybe we were on the train together, actually, and then we were thinking, if there was a sentence that could summarize the course, and I wrote it, and it's like, because we noticed that some students, especially in the middle, when they really realize, what can we do? Everything we do is bad, actually. So we are really thinking they shouldn't freeze, and I think the conclusion of the course would be maybe, perfection is not expected. Do your best, and it's right. So I think that's mainly the main message that we want to.
Which is very important and be often neglected, right? Speaking of listening, last year I want to share a personal experience. Last year we had like a full event happening in our building at Pakhuis de Zwijger on Women International Day, 8th of March, and I was attending one of our workshops, or actually I was helping, but all the thing was new for me, and they were speaking about listening as an act of empathy, and also like a feminist act in their point of view, how they were explaining. But that was the time that I realized how listening is an important practice, that we usually don't do that on a daily basis. We think that we are listening, but at the same time it's like we're not. We're just hearing stuff. Thank you so much for your presentation. I would like to give the floor to Maria, maybe if you want to add anything. Roberto, Amy, any comments, any reflections?
Yeah, just to, in relation to Vanessa and their chapter also, like how important it is that we write about not only our research, because that's what we tend to do, and that's what we prioritize in the academic career, let's say, teachers at university, but also write about our teaching. And especially when those courses are temporarily, let's say, that they are there for maybe a couple of years or 1 year even, or 5 years, the time that the teacher is there and has that interest for challenging the hierarchy of values that has been normalized through the pedagogical process, it's so important that this experience has been written, and now Vanessa not only inspires her colleagues, but can inspire people worldwide. So, yeah, I just wanted to thank the authors.
Cool. Did you? I also kind of have the same question that I had for Vanessa. What was your students' reflection after doing all of these practices?
Yeah, I try to share that a little bit, but perhaps not clear enough. But it's not that you have 300 plus students and then you can summarize the experience they had.
Sure.
But one of the, I think, most satisfying moments for me, having a student talking to another colleague, well, what really impacted my thinking was this article from Cameron Tonkin-Wise that really made me think that every creative action also brings with it destruction. And I thought that was so crucial, and I thought, yeah, then you got the gist also of this course, and yeah, so I was happy about it. But at the same time, yeah, we had unsatisfied students, yeah, not being happy about the course. They were there as well. So, and especially because like we let them work on real live product service systems that are out there. Which were beautiful concepts. I really, I almost every concept, I really think they are beautiful. But they discovered that they're not perfect. And that was sometimes a little bit too challenging, perhaps for first year students. If you have this idea of design for our future, that's the slogan of the faculty. And then you come there as a first year student and you're told, yeah, but you have to be very humble. So yeah, that's a bit of a conflict in a way.
Yeah, and that's such a pity that we have that even in design faculties. Like that's the place that people are really having high dreams, and when they're there and they're limited, it's really a bummer.
So having dissatisfied students is part of it, right?
True. Yeah.
We want to make them a little bit uncomfortable. And I think what Liz's and Charlotte's chapter invites us to do is to look beyond the vicinity of the design. There is a lot of emphasis on the user, but the design has other effects. When you buy an iPhone, the metals come from very underdeveloped nations, and there are lots of consequences to design. And I think we need to make that clear also.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah, but even
Charlotte looks very
no, but even for the user, I think we are too optimistic about all those positive consequences, while we neglect how this design might harm them. So even of course, we should take more stakeholders into account, but also like negative consequences as a basis. And I mean, I love IDE students because they're super optimistic and wanting to change the world, and I think that's lovely energy. And I'd rather have them naive than pessimistic already or cynical already. So that's a good thing, but how to make it a little bit less naive, and then, yeah, about...
On the ground, maybe, yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much. Please join us here. And I would like to open the floor again for remarks, questions, comments, anything that you would like to add. And also for online audiences who are watching. Again, I'm going to mention the Menti code. It's 45703580. 45703580. So you can just... add it there, and I will receive it in my iPad. So first, I will go to the person who saved the question. Okay, you can go. They offered their place.
Thank you. First of all, amazing that you teach already first years about ethics and values. The only question I have is, there's so many different values that would be great to design for, but sometimes it's just really hard to figure out, do I prioritize now sustainability or justice, and are you then, as a designer, the one who should kind of have like a standpoint on what are the values you design for, or should you listen to the users, or how do you prioritize which values are the most important one, which is the most important stakeholder to listen to? Do you have an opinion on that?
Well, I think Ibo is a real expert on this. I do have an opinion on it. at some point we were so service-minded as designers towards users that we forgot about our own values. And I think our own values are important as well. I don't know how to prioritize. I do think that's a difficult question. Yeah, there's these ideas about life-centered design, that we should design for humanity, but that's that's a very difficult thing to do. And at the same time, we should try at least to minimize the harm done and try to make it better. But it's not only like we come from this hyper focus on the user. So I think it's already better that we are diversifying. I don't know how to prioritize exactly, and how it should be more democratic. But I don't know how exactly, and that's not my field of research.
But may I add something? And it's more of a question to you, Charlotte, of prioritizing our own values, but at the same time, just to make it clear, it's not interfering with the fact that we also at the same time should acknowledge our biases, right? As a designer, that there are something back there that made us design in a way that it might not end in the most inclusive design, right?
Yeah, and that's also why, for example, a design team should be diverse. Yeah. And then you're bypassing some problems. Yeah.
Was it an answer to your question? Kinda, right? Ibo, do you want to add something? Mike can come to you. Just a moment. And Esther. Yay.
Yeah, well, there is a lot I can say about it, but so one thing I want to challenge a bit the idea of well, I think there's something interesting if you say something is a value. So we often talk about our own values, but I think if we claim something to be a value, I think there is an implicit claim that it is not just important for me, but for everyone. Now I think there's something like your own values, because we might have all our own perspective on what is good. But it is not, if I say this is a value, I don't mean this is just important for me, but I mean to say it's important for everyone. And I think this is important to realize. So values is not just a preference or something you like, but something that you claim to be important for everyone. Now we have different perspectives on that, and for that reason we need different people. So in that sense, for me, there is not a contradiction to, in the end, there shouldn't be a contradiction between designing for the values of the designer and the values of the user or the values of the community. In an ideal world, they're all the same values. Of course, in reality, they are not. But I think this is important to realize, because then we can have a conversation. It's not just I like this and you like that, but we together can think about what are the values. And I think that at least help. That doesn't answer the question, what are the priorities, but it helps to have a conversation that's about what we all have a reason to find important. And I think it is, for me, and that's a very philosophical answer in a sense, but for me it's about that, having that conversation, and not just about, oh, I like this and you like that, because I think it's more than that.
Yeah, true. No, there are like common values out there that we're missing.
Yeah,
in a way.
That's at least what. And of course, we should recognize that if you're in a vulnerable position or in a position of being dominated, you might. So actually, these people might know better what the values are in some sense, because they have experienced what it means not to have access to a value.
Yeah.
But to some extent, I think we can all have that access to these values.
Yeah.
That's the way I would look at it.
No, that's very good, actually. If you want to add something, Roberto?
No, I just wanted to add that I think it's very difficult indeed to answer your question, what values to prioritize. But I think in their course, for example, they mentioned responsible design. And responsible design for me is kind of, goes in the direction of what Ibo is saying. It's something that we all share, that design is something that should be responsible towards the greater community and not only the users. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I don't have an answer, but...
That was a tough question, apparently. Perfect. Thank you so much. I guess we had another question here. And, yeah.
Hi, thank you.
Hi. May I know your name and which chapter of the book you've written?
Yeah, sure. I think it was chapter 7, 6 or 7.
If we can have a look at the content page at the beginning of, we had it at the beginning of the program. Chapter 5. What is the title? Designing for Digital Well-being. Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so, well, really nice for the panel. Very excited for the book to come out. So I'm Matthew Dennis. I'm from TU Eindhoven. And I guess I do have a question, but also I could introduce the chapter a little bit if you want, since you mentioned it. So I guess it sort of goes back to the gentleman at the back, his very first question about, what does this book say to designers? And I suppose the chapter was trying to address a problem in that values, as I think comes across when you start to sort of dig down into it, it's very abstract. So we all have values, we all have a way of life that we, when that way of life is jeopardized, then we're like, well, this goes against my values. But it can be quite hard to vocalize and say what your values are. So the book tries to find a way for students to do this, and it draws on a tradition within moral philosophy, looking at moral exemplars, so people that really exemplify a way of life that we recognize as valuable. So ask students to look at celebrities that they admire, and then to get the ball rolling by a discussion of which celebrities they admire, then why do they admire those celebrities, which values do they embody, and that way of sort of unpacking what this quite abstract and highfalutin concept is makes it a lot more concrete. So that's what the chapter was about, but I also have a question for the editors and maybe the other authors. So I just wondered about because I haven't read all the chapters yet. The book is on its way, I believe. But I just wondered about the value of beauty, which is something that is often associated with design. I have a background in the arts. I did some of my graduate work at Goldsmiths College in London. And definitely within contemporary art, the value of beauty is somewhat problematic. It's art, contemporary art particularly, isn't really about beauty. I mean, it's something that artists are interested in to some extent, but they're much more interested in addressing problems to do with ways of life, maybe sort of big ecological issues, social issues, rather than sort of an aesthetic approach. So I think a lot of people, when they're looking and thinking and talking and buying design, that's one reason why they're interested in it. And now with aesthetics, you have some sort of commonality that we agree what's beautiful and what's not. So I wondered if beauty appears in any of the other chapters. I can check when the book arrives through the post. Thank you.
Okay, well, I haven't got a fully formulated answer to that very complicated and interesting question. I think perhaps Maria and I do deal with it a little bit in our chapter, which was about writing an architectural history syllabus, because we talk about the canon of knowledge in an architectural education, and this is the kind of the big hitters, if you like, that everybody has to learn when they're studying architecture. And to some extent, beauty is then sort of very much tied into this canon of what is good architecture historically. And of course that comes with all of the biases, the patriarchal Western colonial biases that go on top of that. So to a certain extent, if you're trying to undo the canon or remake it in some way, you're also challenging what is beautiful and what beauty means. And actually Maria was part of a team that kind of produced this exhibition in our architecture corridor, which at the moment still actually has, I think it's about 86, is it 85, 86 portraits, with I think 80 of them are white men, of sort of the great architects. And so your exhibition was amazing because it actually produced a kind of alternative canon, and some of these were non-human things, right? Or they were, women or groups of people that had worked behind the scenes and maybe producing things that were actually quite messy and unappealing, but responded to other kinds of needs and kind of had a more sort of social goal. And I think particularly with the feminist movement, say from the 80s and 90s, you also see that kind of celebration of, in a way, a kind of ugliness that is more about process than product. So yeah, I suppose in that sense, the book does deal with it in sort of trying to sort of untangle where our systems of knowledge and categories of knowledge come from, and beauty, I think, is probably within that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I guess that was a very good answer to the question. I guess I saw another hand back there, and I would say that would be probably the last question, because we're tight on time.
Yes, thank you. You already mentioned a bit about value tensions, and I think it's a very interesting topic. Did you find any value tensions surprising arising from your education by writing this book that you did not expect to see or experience yourself, but they arise throughout the process? Thank you.
Very democratic.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I have this maybe interesting value tension I experienced when working at TU Delft, because I think for me, for my own value hierarchy, or I don't know, I'm on slippery ice. I feel on slippery ice, but I feel like I lost my optimism about technology and how it can help us to find our place in our ecology. And that made me switch jobs, because I cannot, if technology is not the answer, I need to find the answer elsewhere, in a new economic system, in permaculture thinking, design. And that's just not taught at the TU Delft. So I had to move in a way.
You want to add something?
Yes, actually, our chapter, the chapter Amy was mentioning, deals with value tension, all the tensions that were produced during the time the feminist movement was quite strong at the Faculty of Architecture, and the students were claiming for an epistemic change in architectural contents and these kind of things. And also, I mean, that theoretical tension was also a real tension, let's say, spatialized and materialized through human bodies. And reflecting about that tension also produced more tension sometimes. And publishing about that tension maybe increased the tension too. So, but that's not something, it's not necessarily something bad. I mean, we need
some conflict.
Yeah, right? We need to talk about conflicts. And conflicts are the things that move things forward, let's say, in a way. And of course, we need to do it with respect and empathy and connection and service, let's say. But it is necessary. We cannot avoid these conversations. We need to give urgent answers to the problems we are facing as a society, and this is something that involves us all. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions, and thank you for your groundbreaking answers. I would like to get all of you together, but as you can see, there is no space, so I'll move there, and I invite Ivo to my place, and I also invite Vanessa to join us, so if we can have her on the screen back again, so we can wrap up this evening together. Yes, please, you can sit here. So the question is, first I need to check that I'm in a good, first, thank you again to all of you. Wow, it's weird from here. I wanted to ask first a question of, like, you have all read the book, you know all the chapters. What is the most important value that you would pick? Or all of them are important, but if you want to pick one value out of the book, what it would be?
The role of the designer.
Can you have the mic?
The role of the designer. This location that I was talking about not being the solution giver, but well, a lot of people talk about facilitating, but I think there is more to design. I think you can advance ideas. You can be a little bit revolutionary. You can contest. I think. I don't see a lot of contestation in design, and I think that would be interesting.
Perfect, thank you. And maybe a question more for Vanessa, that is actively in educating and teaching, and of course, like Amy and the rest of you. What are we looking forward in the next steps in teaching the values in your classes and implementing them?
Well, like I was sharing you earlier, for I think one year. Now I'm sharing this with more colleagues. Now I lead a team, so I think it's important to explore, to experiment, but also to share and to encourage more people to change the way they see, they understand architecture, they see how architecture affects our lives, and also questioning about how they are teaching or what they want to teach, or how they want to move their students now. So for me, it was important to, after almost 7-8 years of experiencing this methodology, I was like ready to go bigger, you know, to have this team and go from a class from 24 students to 150 students now. So I think it's important to contagious more people to see and to question about what they are teaching and how they want to teach.
Yeah, it's more like a collective effort between teachers and students, both of them together, so to say. Anyone wants to add anything to this? What are we looking forward?
Well, I was trying to think of a value that I found important in the book, and it's not a value, but I think there's an idea that comes up in several of the chapters, and is very explicit in one by David Roberts, who was actually our kind of keynote speaker at the first workshop we had, and we did invite him tonight, but he's a new dad, so he couldn't make it. But he writes about encouraging students to take a position in the world, and about positionality, and it's come up already a bit tonight. But I do think that thing of actually asking students to really, really think about what do they stand for and what do they believe is really important and critical, and probably something we don't do enough ourselves, also as educators, but we certainly probably don't do it enough with the students. So I think David proposes a very creative way of doing that we actually all participated in at the workshop, which is actually chanting out these manifesto statements that we believe in, sort of saying them out loud, and just actually forcing yourself to do that is very powerful. And yeah, I think for me that's one of the biggest takeaways of the book.
Yeah, interesting. Ibo, what are we looking forward in teaching Delft Design for Values Institute? What is looking for in teaching and implementing these values that we've been talking about during this evening?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of things we're discussing shows how important it is to teach these things and to be. I mean, we can talk about it, we can do research, but actually in teaching and instilling is maybe not the right word because it sounds like we telling people what to do. But I think it is very important to make people reflect, to put them maybe off their designer perspective, see the other perspective, create empathy. So and like I said, I mean, it's the mission of the institute that in a sense all students at TU Delft, and maybe all students anywhere should learn this kind of capabilities, abilities to question things, and also not to disconnect it from what they going to do in their professional practice. I mean, I think so. There's being able to do this, but also to make it concrete and to, in a sense, to change the world accordingly, so to say. Yeah, so that's a big ambition, but I think that started with teachers who are enthusiastic about it and students who want to learn.
Sure. It's the beginning, maybe.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We will get there. To Roberto, Amy, and Maria, are we expecting a second edition of the book? Another 5 years?
Look, we have an idea.
What's the idea?
But we are a bit tired.
Spoil it a bit for
well,
us.
the idea is actually this is, as Ibo has mentioned, this is the justice year of the Delft Design for Values Institute. We want to explore teaching design for justice. It's a little bit, difficult to talk about this subject, but we don't know if we have the stamina to do it. But it's one of our ideas, right, Amy?
Yes, yeah. This is the second time you sprung this on me in public, so I don't have an answer, but it's a great idea.
We have a lot of stuff to do, but
yeah, maybe first you need a holiday after publishing this version, and then start thinking about. Okay. Any final thoughts, comments, the takeaway from this evening you want to share? Otherwise, I can go with the final words. So tonight we discussed about a lot of different things. I tried to took some notes. It was hard to gather them all together and just try to summarize the evening. But of course, the program is recorded. You can watch back. But we discussed a lot about the fact that value, I guess these are the things that for me was really new and really made me think that value is not a preference in itself. It's something that we need to see how we want to implement it, and also like the focus that we've been focusing a lot on the user, while at the same time it's beyond the user experience. An inclusive design is beyond only the user experience, and also the value tensions we talked about. So again, you can have access to the book. This time I'm gonna say the correct address. You can have access to the book via books.open.tudelft.nl. There you can read the full digital version, and of course you can also order the hard copy. And I want to thank everyone in the room with us, Liz, Charlotte, Roberto, Amy, Maria, Ibo, and also Vanessa. Thank you. I know that you're in the middle of something family, I remember. Thank you so much for staying with us the whole time. And also people here with us in the studio, please give yourself a warm round of applause. I also want to say that we will continue. We have started the current DCFA fellowship, which is titled Beings of the Economy with Shinta Osterwal. We had the first episode last week, and we're going to have the second episode on 26th of February. It's the healing. In short, it's the series. It's about how our current economic system is traumatizing and how we are dealing on a daily basis with meta crisis, which is defined as all the crises of our time together: climate change, existential crisis, and you name it. And in this episode, we are going to focus on healing, how we can collectively healing. And the third episode, which will be the last episode of this fellowship, is going to be on 25th of March, the sanctuary. And we want to discuss how economy can be a sanctuary for all life. So stay tuned, check our website. You can have access to all the DCFA programs, previous one. All of them are recorded, uploaded on Podcast de Zwijger's website, and also are on our YouTube channel. You can have access to dezwijger.nl/DCFA. And last but not least, as you have experienced, all of our programs are free, so you can become the friend of Podcast de Zwijger and donate as you wish. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a good evening.